Hello there, Ray here, and today we'll be looking at 4 really cool farms that come out for 1.17. I made 2 new farms for the glowberries, and I made 2 new farms that produce moss as well as the Azalea. If you're wondering what is all up with these new blocks and vegetation, check out my snapshot review video on the latest version of the Caves and Cliffs update. I'll have it linked down below. These 5 new blocks in the game are all types of vegetation and are great for building and adding some extra greenery to your build. The Azalea makes great little bushes. We also got the moss block, which can look like grass on all sides. The moss carpet, which can cover up light sources while still letting light through, and a way better choice than using green carpet. The glowberries are a vine that produces light with these berries on them and can also be eaten. And all these items can be composted back down into bone meal. And right as the new snapshot comes out, we went on to our testing world and designed up 4 new farms so you could automatically get tons of these new items. All 4 of these farms are automatic. Once you have them built up in your world, you just have to come by and pick up the loot or resupply them with bone meal. Now these 3 take bone meal, but this one here doesn't take any bone meal. Now even though this farm doesn't use bone meal, it does rely on random ticks which only occur around the player. So for this glowberry farm, you want to place it near your base while it can be growing in the background while you're doing other stuff in the area. Now, glowberries are like other vines where if you have one of them attached to a block, they will over time just start to grow. And they randomly will produce fruit on these vines. Now, Tiz Awesome looked into the Minecraft code, and on average, when these vines grow, about 11% of them will produce the fruit. And those are the ones that will actually drop the item. But with a large farm like this, you will get plenty of it over time. Now, I designed this farm to be very simple. As you see, there's not much to it, just a large ceiling to plant in your vines. And then we have some water collection here in the center. And since this is all automatic, the player won't have to be here to harvest the berries. This flying machine here will do it. Very simple. We just got some honey blocks that is on a small engine here in the center, and I just hooked this one up to a daylight sensor so that this machine will only harvest it when it turns night and also when it turns daytime. And you can see how it works. The fly machine moves across and breaks off the vines. Now, if the vines have any berries on it, they'll break off and turn into the actual fruit here, and they'll fall down into the water. And the reason why we use honey blocks so that the items will stick to the top of it and they won't get slingshot out of the farm. Then we had these blocks here to push off any items that are on top of it so they fall down into the water stream. So if I just throw in some items, you see that they get collected up and moved towards the center. And we have some hoppers here, which just pick them up and put them into the chest. So you can see you actually get quite a few of them, and you can use these to produce more vines, or you can use them as a food source. And to get the initial glowberries for your farm, you just have to find these guys in a lush cave. Also have a return system here, which just sends the fly machine back to the other side. This farm is very simple, not a lot of complex devices, but it will produce a lot of these new berries. The next farm we're taking a look at is this automatic glowberry farm that uses bone meal. Now the advantage of this little farm is that it's much smaller than that, and it will produce berries more quickly. But the downside is that it will take bone meal. And the next 2 farms we're going to take a look at also take bone meal. If you guys want to know how to easily get this stuff, make sure to check out these videos where I cover infinitely automatic ways to get bone meal to supply these type of farms. So the way you operate this one is you just come over here and you will flip this trap door. They go inside of here and then you close the trap door. And then all you have to do is right click on this glowberry with some item that can't be used. I'm just going to be holding a block, and if I right click it, it's going to harvest the berry off of the vine, and then it's going to automatically bone meal again to make more berries grow on it. So if I just hold down right click, you see the player will constantly harvest it and the dispenser will constantly bone meal it. Let me go ahead and stand out here so you can see how this is working. We just have a single vine in there. And when you apply bone meal to it, it will produce berries instantly. Then when you right click it, it's going to make those berries drop as item, which are being picked up by this hopper and put into this barrel over here. It will only produce 1 berry per harvest. But removing that berry will cause an update to this block, which can be detected by this observer, which goes into this block over to this redstone, which powers back down into this block. And that's going to power this dispenser, which is going to apply the bone meal again. So this creates a cycle here. As long as you're there to keep removing it, it's just going to keep bone milling it. And as soon as you stop right clicking, it's going to stop bone milling. And with these berries, it doesn't actually waste any bone meal if there's already some fruit on it. Now the entire build is very compact, as you can see, and it will produce you more berries you'll know what to do with. Now there is kind of a little trick you can do when you're inside of here. If you happen to click on the vine at the right moment, you can actually harvest it much faster. So I clicked and then I released my mouse and then I clicked again, and you can see I'm actually harvesting extremely fast. Now it's actually so fast that the hopper that we have underneath is not going to be able to pick up all the items, so make sure you have some room in your inventory to pick up all the extras. Very simple and very fast. Once you stop, the hopper will be able to eventually catch up and put all the items into there. So these next two farms I designed work automatically and also rely on bone meal. Now the nice thing about these farms is that since they take bone meal, they can also run without a player nearby. That means if you build them up in your spawn chunks, they can produce an unlimited amount of azalea and moss blocks, moss carpet, and they also have a byproduct of wheat seeds. And if you wanted to, they can be infinitely automatic, meaning that if you hook these up to a compost farm, they can supply all the bone meal that's needed for them. During my snapshot review video, I showed that you can bone meal moss blocks, and this will produce the new types of vegetation. This includes growing moss carpets on these blocks, also the azalea, including the flowering azalea type, and you can get normal grass, which when broken will produce the wheat seed. Also, if you have any natural blocks nearby, like this dirt, it will convert it into a moss block. So I expanded upon this and produced those two automatic farms. Now initially I wanted to make it similar to my flower farms where I shift the floor and then all the flowers on top would break off as items and then pick them up with a hopper minecart. Problem is these moss carpets don't break off when the blocks shift, they just sit there. So I use pistons to break them off. So what I got here is a 7x7 area of moss blocks, got pistons pointing downwards, and I got a dispenser in the center that is applying bone meal to this very center one. And this is how big an area they can place in the vegetation. So the way it works, it applies the bone meal to this block right here. And then this is going to produce all the new blocks, which then we're going to activate these pistons. And when these extend, they're going to pop all the blocks off, which then will turn into the items. And then the items will just fall here and they'll get picked up by the hopper minecarts, which are rolling around underneath. Now this farm here is very fast. Let's go ahead and turn it on. And we got an observer clock here, which is powering both the dispenser underneath and also the pistons up above. And what it's doing is bone milling it. Then it's coming in with the pistons, breaking them shortly after, so you can't even see the vegetation growing, but it is growing there and it's breaking it off. And you can already see there is a lot of items and they're getting picked up and placed into these chests here. And even having this farm at the slow mode produces an insane amount of items. We got the azalea, we got the flowering azalea, the moss carpet, and the byproduct from the grass, which is the wheat seed. You do need quite a few hopper minecarts to go back and forth to pick up all the items, otherwise there will be an excess of them. So this is on the slow mode, and if I change this to the faster mode, it will produce them even faster yet, and the hopper minecarts cannot actually keep up this. So if you want to use this mode, you'd have to put it in more of those guys. It can actually go faster than this too if you directly hook up this observer clock right into this block here, but it becomes so fast that the items get glitched into the pistons, which create a lot of lag. So I don't recommend using that one. If you do happen to use that one, then the items can end up being inside of these pistons, which then can sometimes elevate them on top of the pistons, and that's why I have this empty area here. You can put in water in these two areas, and that will wash any items that get stuck here to the far side. So place it here, like that. So if anything would end up here, it would just end up getting washed to the other side, and then it get picked up by the hopper minecarts. And I also left a gap around the outside here, so items that sometimes glitch into these pistons will end up getting shoved out to the edge here rather than getting stuck on top of this redstone piece up here. Same thing for each of these. The items will be inside of here and they'll clip out to the side and end up over on the edges. The main cause for items to get stuck inside of blocks and get squished out or start rising is because they're partly inside of it and they don't have anywhere to go. So this will give them an area to go, which is along here. Now we'll go through a lot of bone meal And the bone meal is picked up from this chest here, so you just want to fill this up and make sure to keep these hoppers full, because if these hoppers get empty, then they can pick up items that come from the hopper minecarts. You can see where all those items that it picked up. So long as these are full of items, it's not possible for any other item to get picked up inside of here. And it's a cool little trick you can do to kind of compact hoppers into a small area. But they're all making their way over here into this dropper. Dropper's pointing it into another dropper, which is right here. And then that goes into the dispenser, which is going into that moss block right here. You can see it activating. Now even on the slow mode, I think you'll end up with way more items than what you'll know to do with. Now for this farm, the on off switch is right here. If you just flick that lever, it's going to lift this observer up, which is going to stop the clock. And then the hopper minecarts will continue to pick up the rest of the items. If you want to turn off these guys as well, you can put a lever right here to turn off of them, so they won't keep rolling back and forth. But remember to turn it back on before you activate the farm. This farm is not too overly complicated. I try to keep everything relatively simple while still allowing it to be very fast. It seems like my biggest problem was just keeping these chests empty because they fill up so fast. Now we looked at 3 of the 4 farms. The last one here is definitely my favorite. I had a lot of fun designing this one. And this one is similar to this one, but it produces more items. This one gives you the azalea, flowering azalea, and the moss carpet. Where this one will do those 3 items, plus it also will produce the moss block. This is done by that same mechanic that I showed you guys, where bone milling a moss block by having other natural blocks nearby will actually convert it over. Which blocks will it convert over? Well, it can do dirt, gravel, stone, granite, diorite, andesite, and sand. So if I go ahead and bone mill this one here, you can see it converted those ones over. Now this is different than some other blocks. Blocks like grass, coarse dirt, and podzol will allow the vegetation to grow on top, but it won't convert the actual blocks. And vegetation like the moss carpet will actually be applied on top of any full squared block. So in this farm, what I did is I chose the easiest block to get a lot of, which is stone. I have a stone generator in there. And we're just pushing the stone in first, and then we are converting the stone over by bone milling a podzol in the center. And then this will change some of it out for moss blocks. And then it also will put vegetation on top of those, like the moss carpet. We also got the azalea, and you see we had some grass. So we can end up getting all 4 types and the byproduct with the wheat seeds. I designed this farm to be very simple and consistent. We just got some water sources down here that are in this waterlogged stairs, and they're flowing over here. And we have a lava source there, which when this block gets pushed out, the lava will flow downwards, touch the water, which makes stone, and then it gets pushed upwards, and then when there is room, it also gets pushed over to the side. So now you can see we grew some more moss, and it's going to push over, and you can see how it pushes up and over and just pushes into the area which had moss. Now the unique thing about moss block is that it's kind of like pumpkins or melons. When it gets pushed by another block, it breaks off and drops its block type as an item. So this makes it very easy to remove the blocks. We don't need to have to use like any TNT or withers, but instead we just push in the new stone, and that pops off the moss and all of the items on top of it. Now the moss carpet won't pop off just by sliding those blocks in, so that's why I also have pistons up above to squish down and break those blocks off. And then the items are being picked up by a hopper minecart system underneath. This one we only need a single one because the system is slow enough for one to do the entire area by itself. And then it's just dropping its items off. You can see, yeah, you get a lot of the moss block. You get that more than anything else. Where the other farm, you get a lot of the moss carpet. Now this farm does have some redstone in it, but I try to keep it to a minimal. We just got a clock way down here, which is running everything. This is on and off switch right here. That's off, this on. And then this is going to send signals into this area here, which is going to power these pistons. Then there is a short delay, and then it's going to power these pistons. There's also a separate system that is attached to this as well, right over here. Every time power comes in, it's also going to this T flip-flop chain. And this is a binary counter. It counts up to 8, and then once it reaches that number, it's going to activate the dispensing of bone meal. So when that thing activates, it activates that, which come over here and go into this dispenser. And then that is pointing directly into a moss block. And the reason why we make it count to 8 is because we push in 8 rows of stone and then we convert it over and then we push in another 8. That way we get to the most moss blocks converted per each bone mill. So the system is very efficient on bone mill. It doesn't take very much compared to the other system. Now, even though this one is considerably slower than that fast one over there, it still over time will produce an insane amount of blocks. Plus, just like the other one, you can place this one inside of your spawn chunks and hook it up to a iron golem farm and uses the poppies to produce the bone mill to run this farm, all without having to need any players online, which makes it infinitely automatic. But what's really cool about this farm is that if you want to, you can take some of the product. So let's say you get too much like moss blocks or too much moss carpet, and you can pipe that into a composter and get bone meal out of it. But what's really cool about this farm is it actually provides a surplus for bone meal. So I put 64 bone meal into this dispenser, and then all the products that came off of just those 64 bone meal, I collected and put into this composter and then compost them down into bone meal again. And you can see from the 64, I almost tripled the amount that I got out of it. So even though this farm is slow, you can actually use this as a bone meal source on its own. Very similar to my infinitely automatic wood farm. But with this one, you don't actually need any TNT dupers, which makes this farm a must-have for any survival world. Now this fast farm here doesn't make a surplus of bone meal. It used 104 bone meal and it only provided 58 bone meal when composting the items back down again. Now you might have noticed the extra stone gets pushed out here to the end. It doesn't really hurt anything, but if you want to, you can actually hook this up to a TNT duper and blow this up for some extra cobble or put it into a wither cage. That way you can get cobble alongside of getting all this other amazing vegetation blocks. Now let's talk about the rates of these farms. How many items do they produce per hour? Now with this one here, it really depends on the size of it, since you can scale it up to make it longer or wider. So the rates on that one can vary. Now for this little one here, it can be quite fast, producing over 17,000 glowberries per hour. But that means it also does take 17,000 bone meal. Now for this farm over here, the one that produces the moss blocks, it produces 3,000 moss blocks per hour, 700 moss carpet, 300 azalea, 100 flowering azalea, and 160 seeds per hour, which makes a total of 4,300 items per hour. Pretty good for a farm that just runs on its own. Now by far the fastest is this one here. I tested it with the second to fastest speed and it produces around 51,000 moss carpets per hour, 23,300 azalea per hour, 10,000 flowering azalea, and 15,500 seeds per hour, for an astonishing total of around 104,000 items per hour. So depending on how quickly you need the items as well as how much bone meal you're willing to use, you can choose among these 4 farms. Now besides making these 4 amazing farms, we also did a lot of testing to do with the new blocks, so there will be a video out going over all the common questions you guys probably have about these new blocks and items. So make sure you guys are subscribed as well as hit that bell button so you'll get notified of when that video comes out. And if you enjoy building simple farms like this, I have hundreds of designs so you can end up farming every item in the game of Minecraft, all automatically. Now if you do build these up, try to build them all inside of one chunk. You can show this by doing F3 plus G. That way when it's loaded, the entire thing is loaded. This could prevent any redstone from being partially loaded. If you'd like to build up any of these farms, make sure to check out the world download. It has these farms as well as all the other 1.17 farms. And you can see exactly block for block how to build them up. And when you're down in the description, checking out my amazing playlist, make sure to hit the like button as it is the best way for these videos to get noticed. And if you'd like to see how I come up with these amazing farms and contraptions, I do live stream on Twitch 4 times a week, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And you guys can even join me in my Minecraft world as we play around with all these fun things. I would like to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye!